Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Liz LeClaire. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the director of, I don't even know, special projects. Sometimes I have a lot of different hats that I wear. I'm director of special projects with the Nova Scotia SPCA. I am stepping in today for Sarah Lyon, who was supposed to be moderating this session, but has been dealing with a whole host of media and other things, so she asked me to step in today. I may have met some of you down at the booth downstairs with my colleague Paula, who's in the back. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for allowing us to be here. I want to start by acknowledging that we are here today on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we are very grateful that the SPCA is very fortunate to be in partnership with many of the communities across, Indigenous communities across Nova Scotia. So I'm really excited. I think I mentioned this a few times. We are going to have hopefully the cutest slide deck of all of the slide decks. I mean, unless someone's got a slide deck full of babies and puppies and kittens, then maybe we don't. But we'll try our best. And so our session today is in regards to housing and animal welfare. And when we sort of first started talking about this, Sarah Napier, who's the CEO of the United Way, had mentioned a bit earlier this summer that this conference was coming to Halifax. My first thought was it would be really important for us to start having more visibility and chatting with this community in regards to the impact that housing's having on animal welfare in Canada. It's not a sort of a topic that I think people think naturally aligns, or they don't always think of it as an issue, but we in the animal welfare sector are really, I always like to tell people when I'm out meeting with them, the health and welfare of the animals that people have are usually a barometer of the health and welfare of a community in general. There's a few reasons for that. I won't get into too many of them because I think Kathleen may talk about it, but at the SPCA, the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, we and a lot of the humane organizations across Canada really are a frontline service, almost like a social service at this point. It used to be that our mandate was primarily just in regards to animal welfare. Our SPCA has a unique history here in Nova Scotia. For anyone that isn't from Halifax or from Nova Scotia, in 1917, I'm going to embarrass myself with history, we had the Halifax explosion, which decimated our harbor, and there were thousands of people that either died or were displaced. We actually, our mandate shifted a tiny bit to include Society of Prevention for the Cruelty of Animals and I think it was children as well. So our organization was founded under an act of legislation. We do have an extensive mandate across the province. I'll just get into that really briefly. But we just wanted to welcome you all here today, and thank you for joining us and for your interest in this subject. So instead of me trying to talk off the top of my head, I'll use the actual slide deck. From 2008 to 2021, the Nova Scotia SPCA helped, why are you moving? Okay. Helped more than 62,000 animals find families across this province. We support all of Nova Scotia through our 6 main facilities. We have shelters in Colchester. We have a campus in Dartmouth in the Burnside Industrial Park. Kings County, we have Pictou County, we have Yarmouth, and for some reason Cape Breton is missing on that list. I will have to fix that. We have a combination at all of our sites of different activities that we do. We own and operate 3 thrift stores, 1 in Cape Breton, 1 in Dartmouth, and 1 in Kings. We have 20 bylaw and kenneling service contracts, serving more than 700,000 Nova Scotians, including 8 First Nations communities. And Joanne, who's here today, and I'll introduce her, will talk to you more about our partnerships. In 2021, we launched the Nova Scotia SPCA College of Animal Welfare to ensure a strong pipeline of veterinary assistants and vet techs that are available across the province. And our annual operating budget is roughly around $6 million. We have about 160 employees across the province. So I'd just like to share that with you so you understand the scope and size of what we're doing. We're not just talking about this from really a hyper-local perspective. We are across all aspects of this province. So And our panelists today, so I'm really pleased to introduce to you Kathleen Dunbar, and I'll let Kathleen introduce herself. She is a social worker. Oh my God, this slide deck is moving on its own. There's ghosts in the computer. Kathleen is a social worker and also an RVT, a registered vet tech, and operates, it's a business?
It's Tender Tales through Carnegie.
Tender Tales through Carnegie Animal Hospital. Joanne Landsberg, who's our Chief Provincial Inspector for Enforcement, is also here joining us today. And Heather Wooden, who's the Director of Administration and Programs at the Nova Scotia SPCA. Again, more adorable slides. That's what you're here for content. Just really some quick stats. Again, these have shifted. Our numbers have evolved over the last little while. But we have roughly every year about 14,000 pets served through our animal rescue progressive programs and rehoming opportunities. Usually about just under 4,000 animals, we help them find homes every year. And our hospitals across the province have performed just over 6,000 surgeries for animals in need. We have some services available that Heather will speak to today. So how is animal welfare being impacted, or what is the sort of connection between housing and animal welfare? So we've done some surveys across the province, and one of the things that we have noted is that roughly about 75% of Nova Scotians have a pet. I'm sorry, I hope I wasn't too boring for you. 75% of Nova Scotians have a pet. 98% of those individuals consider their pets a family member. And 65% of Nova Scotians say that their pet helps their mental health. And really, that's an important thing for us to note. When we talk about companion animals at the Nova Scotia SPCA, we're talking, people often think cats and dogs, but we're also thinking rabbits, mice. Not everyone's going to love this. Rats. We have lizards, birds, yes. Iguanas, snakes, you name it, we've pretty much, and I can testify to this. During the wildfires, I was with Heather out helping rescue some of the animals from the house, and she came out with a pot with what was it called? I can't even remember. It was some kind of a lizard in a pot. So, and we're talking about family members, fish, yeah, you name it. So that's what we're talking about. So when we're talking about that numbers, it's not all cats and dogs. So really, you're all experts in housing, but I think it's really important that we sort of give you some sort of a preface of what we're talking about. We're in obviously a massive crisis in Nova Scotia that we've never really witnessed before, and at least in the time that I've ever lived here. The volume of available housing and rental market is extremely low. We're also dealing with a major problem right now, and you may have seen it in the news with some of our partners at some of the other organizations have noted that a lot of people are experiencing evictions due to owning pets. There's a difference between pet-friendly housing and pet-inclusive housing. And one of the things I want to note is that pet-friendly housing includes any housing that allows residents to have at least one animal in their home. Pet-inclusive housing includes any housing that allows residents additional flexibility on the number, type, size, and breed of pets. We are seeing some really serious challenges in regards to pet-friendly housing, not pet-inclusive. We're also seeing some major issues for those experiencing temporary homelessness, or if they're escaping domestic violence. A lot of the emergency shelters do not allow animals, and so what we're really often experiencing is an uptick in people needing temporary somewhere for their animals to stay while they're seeking housing. I'm not sure if anyone's aware, there was a recent story where there was a woman with 2 small dogs who was living out of her car for most of the summer because she could not find a place that would allow her. She had a full-time job, was capable of paying her deposit. She was able to pay her damage deposit, but she could not find anywhere that was pet-friendly. So that's what we're dealing with. We have people sleeping in cars so that they can stay with their animals. Another really good example is that we just worked with the United Way this summer. There was an elderly couple who lost their home in the wildfires. They had 3 cats. It took quite a long time for them to find somewhere for their cats to go. but they were actually not buying themselves food or paying for their medication because they had to save up the damage deposit to be able to pay for that for their rental housing. So that's the kind of situation we're in. We're not, so it's funny to some people who don't own animals may think like that sounds insane, but for people, these are members of their family.
Can I just say that through COVID and the lockdowns, the Asian population, there's a lot of people that have said that having their pets are like sanity savers. Some of those that
Yes.
live off themselves and they did not have their pets to keep them more routine and have companionship.
Absolutely. And the other thing I just want to note is for people who are unhoused or chronically that are living on the streets, a lot of people do have dogs, and we are often dealing with issues around that. But those dogs often act as companionship, friendship, mental health supports, but they are also security. So we definitely get calls about that somehow people living outside with their animals is cruelty to animals. And I mean, Joanne can maybe speak to that more, but we don't consider that a crime against an animal for them to be loved. And more often than not, these individuals are taking very good care of their animals, probably better than some people that do have a roof over their head. So based on a survey that was done by the Mickelson Found Pet Survey in 2021, this is U.S. statistics, but generally tends to apply across North America. 76% of landlords say that they have pet-friendly housing, which remember goes back to saying that you can have one animal. So if you have more than one animal, you're not necessarily in a better position. Most only allow one pet and have very, very high damage deposits. The average in the United States is about $800 a year for a damage deposit for a pet, which, if you can imagine, is some people's rent. 78% say that damage deposits are of the individual surveys say the cost deposits are prohibitive for them. 24% of people say their pet is the reason that they've had to move, and 14% of people across the states in North America have had to surrender a pet due to lack of housing. So we're going to start off by Kathleen's going to talk a little bit about her work in social work and what she's seeing and the reasons why animals matter. Then I'll be handing it over to Joanne, who's going to talk about enforcement, and then Heather, who's going to talk about our programs and services. So Kathleen, I'm going to hand it over to you. You're welcome to come stand up here. I'll put it back to a really cute something where we have, there you go. Kittens, you can't go wrong.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here, and thank you so much, Liz, for all that information. It was so helpful. Before I get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name, obviously, you know, it's Kathleen. So I'm a veterinary social worker, and a lot of people, they find that, they're like, what the heck's a veterinary social worker? So I basically deal with the intersection of animals and people, and my background, I've worked actually in housing, supportive housing for people with mental health difficulties for a number of, oh, there's a dog. I'm so sorry, I got excited. Oh, hi, sweetie. What a cutie.
Now we're all distracted.
Yeah, exactly. What's your dog's name? Toots. Oh, hi, Toots. I can only speculate where that comes from. Yeah. Yeah. Well, welcome, Toots. So I actually deal with the intersection of the human-animal bond and looking at the human needs of people as well as the animal needs of people. And so, like I said, my background is actually in supportive housing. I've worked there for 25 years. I'm also a therapist in private practice, and additionally, I work at a vet hospital and operate a program called Tender Tales. And Tender Tales is looking at the human needs of the veterinary industry, whether it's pet loss or supporting staff through difficult times such as euthanasia and so on. So if you're wondering what that is. So before I get started, I just want to ask a question as well. Who here has witnessed the benefits of pets and how they affect people's mental health of someone they care about? That's like pretty much everyone, I think. Yeah. And I would agree that pets definitely have a positive influence on people's mental health. The evidence is clear both anecdotally. I mean, just look at how we reacted when Toots came in the room. So both anecdotally, but also in the research. There's a fair amount of research that's been done out there, and it's apparent, and it actually helps support people in 5 ways, and I'm going to review those ways. The first way it does alleviate stress, fights depression, reduces loneliness, improves overall well-being, and it supports people with long-term mental health concerns. And I'm going to review the ways that it does this, and I'm also going to overview some cases, some situations where I've supported people over the years with their pets. But I just want to point out that in order to protect people's confidentiality, the names of the people have been changed, as well as any identifying features. So if you're wondering what's going on with that, I'm going to start with a little bit of boring stuff, a little bit of neurobiology, and this is not my area of expertise, so I just want to point that out. But I want to mention that pets are known to alleviate stress. What pets do actually is there's certain neurotransmitters in the body, and they lower the heart rate and they lower the blood pressure of people when they're experiencing stress. So if you actually look at pet owners compared to non-pet owners, pet owners actually, their stress levels lower at a faster rate when they've experienced stress. So that's a really important thing when you think about when you look at unhoused or precariously housed individuals. So pets increase serotonin levels. Serotonin's known to help with happiness, focus, and calmness. And dopamine will help with motivation and reward. So dopamine's also important. So all these hormones, they regulate stress, including cortisol, oxytocin, and things like that. So these are really important components. The next thing I want to talk about is how pets fight depression. And I want to point out that it's not so much that pets will prevent depression, but studies have shown that pets, it helps regulate people who have depressive symptoms. So for example, in youth or unhoused, depressive symptoms are better regulated when their pets are present. So that's really important. Pet owners actually are 40% less depressed overall than non-pet owners. That's pretty significant, right? Like that's significant, and that's in the research. But we also see you don't need a whole pile of research really to. I mean, I just look at any time we encounter pets, there's a feeling of well-being. And an example comes to mind of someone named Jennifer, who I supported for a number of years. Jennifer is currently 42 years old, and she had a long history of trauma and depression in her life. It dated back to her childhood, but she always felt comfortable and secure when she had her pets around. And unfortunately, she had a cat when she was, I think it was her late 30s, who eventually grew old and developed kidney disease and passed away. And she experienced significant grief when that cat died. Now, it took a fair amount of time, over time, with the right support and processing of her grief. She actually adopted a new cat named Molly. Now, Molly helped her through her depressive symptoms because, as you can imagine, when the cat died, the other cat, she experienced significant grief. It was complicated grief, which means there was significant depression associated with it. So there was a flare-up. So this is a perfect example of how cats and dogs and rabbits or any creature, companion animal, can help with the management of depression. And what they do is actually to help with the management of depression, they offer unconditional positive regard. So they're a source of not being judgmental, and they also offer affection, comfort, love, and close contact. So these are all really important things that can help. Sorry, I keep making funny sounds there. Sorry, you guys. It is, yeah. I'm like, Sorry about that. So it's, as you can see, these traits that a pet can confer can certainly help someone like Jennifer to cope with the management of depression. So pets definitely help with mental health symptoms and depression, but they also help with loneliness. And this is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Pets can help because we have, as humans, an innate need for a feeling of belonging and social connections with other people. And what's interesting is people who sometimes aren't ordinarily interested in being very social with other people, when there's a pet around, they actually become more social. So pets actually can offer two sources of social support, both in their very nature of being social, because you have that connection with your pet. But what can happen is when a pet is around, people feel a connection with other people instantly. It's social, it's biological, it's everything. So I just want to point that out, that pets can offer certain things, and these help mitigate loneliness. Pets provide a feeling of connectedness, reassurance, and normalcy that help mitigate loneliness. And the problem is that loneliness and isolation puts people at increased risk of mental health concerns, such as depression and emotional regulation, and the list is very long. And I want to point out someone who I supported for a period of time. His name is Trevor. So cute. Oh, that's so precious. His name is Trevor, and he was quite isolated. I wouldn't say he was lonely, because he was fortunate, because what he had in his life, he had a pet rabbit. He was precariously housed, so he did have housing. It was difficult, his housing situation, but he had a rabbit. And anyone who knows rabbits, they can be very social creatures, and they can help support someone who, and I'm advertising rabbits. I think SPCA probably has some bunnies they need need homes. But yes, exactly. And they're an amazing source of companionship. And so for Trevor, who had no parents, both his parents were deceased, and he had significant mental health concerns, he flourished because of his pet rabbit. And certainly he relied on his rabbit for those traits that help prevent loneliness, and that is normalcy, connectedness, and reassurance. So certainly that helped him significantly. The next thing I want to talk about is how pets improve overall well-being. Interestingly, what pets can do is they not only help with mental health concerns, they help with physical concerns, and they help provide routine, structure, sleep schedule, and exercise. They provide all those things for people. And this phenomena brings about motivational benefits. So people often feel more motivated and a sense of purpose and well-being in their lives because of the active caring that they have for another being. And I support people through Tender Tales with pet loss, and pet loss is kind of a vague term, because oftentimes we think it's only about death or euthanasia. But I want to mention that pet loss can also involve the surrendering of pets, when people, depending on their life circumstances, and I say this without judgment, because I support lots of people who have surrendered their pets. And when they surrender them, they grieve. It's a natural process to grieve the loss of their pet. And a certain person comes to mind. Her name's Debbie. And Debbie was 71 years old, and she developed mobility problems, so she ended up needing to surrender her pet because of those concerns. she lived in a rural part of Nova Scotia, so there weren't many resources available to sort of intervene at the time. And when I first met Debbie, she was actually in an assisted living facility. She had moved on to that. She was grieving the loss of her dog because her dog gave her a sense of purpose and well-being. And it gave her a sleep schedule, exercise, just all those things. And unfortunately, Debbie did die just a few months ago. She's gone now. And I often think about her because I think about how her dog had given her that sense of purpose and well-being. And if there had been resources in that rural area of Nova Scotia, then maybe she would have been less likely to move into an assisted living facility. Because her dog definitely gave her a sense of purpose and well-being. The concern is that people over the age of 65 are actually, 1/4 of them are actually feeling socially isolated. So Debbie was unfortunately at high risk of developing physical and mental health concerns because of her situation. I'm finally going to talk about how pets support long-term mental health. And as I've already mentioned, pets can help because they offer routine, exercise, a sleep schedule, and things like that. They can also help for people who have distressing symptoms that are related to long-term mental health concerns, such as hearing voices, hallucinations, rumination, depressive symptoms, anything like that. And what can happen is that pets actually have an intuitive sense about them, and this has been proven in research. I feel it intuitively that pets are intuitive, but sorry, that was a silly joke. But it actually has been proven in research that pets will seek out their loved ones when their loved ones are distressed. And I want to end with a message of hope. And what I want to say is there's a client I supported for a long time. His name was John. And John had been unhoused for many years in his life, and he actually currently is living in a group home. He suffers from symptoms of schizophrenia, and he hears voices, and he has a long history of trauma. But what is really neat about John is when he's hearing voices, he actually would go down on the floor, and his cat Ginger will approach him and offer him comfort in those moments. And so I just want to end with that message because it's a message of knowing that pets can offer people support in long-term mental health, but also offer people support in short-term concerns around depressive symptoms or grief. And certainly it's proven in the research, but it's also proven in this room with Toots. So thank you so much, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kathleen. That's really informative. We're very fortunate to have, I would say, an emerging sector of social work and veterinary technicians. So it's really, I love you, Toots. Toots can roam free. If no one else has any problem with him, yeah, go for it. You do you, Toots. So Joanna, it's up to you. Did you want to come up here or did you want to use the microphone? Okay, so I'm now pleased to introduce to you Joanne Landsberg, who is our Chief Enforcement Officer for the province. So.
I'm just going to maybe, if I put this down, Liz, will it take away your, I'm short and I can't see half the people.
Really not important. Okay, I'm following you, Liz.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Joanne Landsberg, and I'm the Chief Provincial Inspector with the Nova Scotia SPCA. So what that means is I oversee all of the enforcement for the Animal Protection Act in Nova Scotia. We have officers situated all across the province, and we tend to all the complaints that come in for animal neglect and cruelty. In addition to that, we have many bylaw contracts across the province for with different municipalities enforcing various bylaws. So I have the responsibility for overseeing that for the SPCA. I was so pleased to be asked, to accompany this panel here today, and because I do see it as a real important issue that we're facing. We're in crisis mode here in Nova Scotia and across Canada, and unfortunately that crisis, it doesn't stop at pets. So generally speaking, when people become unhoused, pets are too. So it's something that we really need to take into consideration. I had an incredible opportunity this summer to work behind the lines, the evacuation lines with the fires that were happening in Tantallon and down in Shelburne. And it was one of the most incredible experiences I'll say I've ever had in my career. I had, firsthand opportunity to, speak with people that were, had lost their homes due to the wildfires, and it was a really challenging experience to speak to those people. We would meet up with, people in parking lots, and, they had pretty much everything that they could grab in the back seat of their vehicle. If they were lucky, they had their pet. The children were there in their vehicles, and, just kind of looking at us with hope, hoping that we can get in there and get their pets and get them back to them, and many people, I've found and determined that, I wasn't able to get their pets for them and bring them back to safety. Some we were, and which was great. It was a great uniting. But it was heartbreaking for the people that, were without pets, without their pets, and the anxiety that it created for them, knowing that their pets were back there, behind the lines, and they had a real urgent need to be with them, and for have that unity again to get them back. It was certainly it was really heartbreaking. I'm sure with the wildfires and all of the floods that happened here in Nova Scotia, that many of the unhoused individuals today, could possibly be a result of that. So it's really inflicted on a lot of people. As a law enforcement agency, we're looking out for animal welfare. The SPCA enforcement team, we're usually the first one that people that call, and landlords call us all the time when they see pets in need of care. This could be for various reasons, including pet abandonment on houses, apartments, or tents for that matter. Tents are considered dwellings as well too, and they have rights. So this year our office received, it was about 125 complaints of animal abandonment. Half of those cases were justified, and 84 animals had to be seized as a result. Other cases would result in situations where it was unfounded, insufficient evidence, or sometimes it was just when a person was in between moving and, they were just really finding it hard. The animals weren't abandoned, but we find people are very quick to assume and to judge and to call us instead of maybe offering to help, which is a little bit frustrating for us. If they just spoke to the person, said, hey, are you moving? Do you need some assistance? Can I help you watch your pet for a little while? Or is there anything I can do? They can be very quick to call us, which is unfortunate. We get a lot of calls from landlords saying, hey, this person is being evicted, and I know they have pets. We want you to come take their pets. And that's just not okay with us. Because a person is getting evicted, it doesn't mean it's a legal eviction. There's so many illegal evictions that we see. Landlords don't have the legal right. They're just locking doors on people, and they're saying, then we get a call, there's pets inside, I've changed the locks, and we find out that it's an illegal eviction. And that person has the right to be in that apartment or house and certainly have access. What we found is the landlords have cut off access to the person's pet, then called us and said that person abandoned them. And that's just not okay with us. We see right through that, and we'll do everything we can to help the person and reunite them with their pet. It certainly wasn't their fault. So obviously getting evicted is not an offense under the law, and neither is not having houses. So unless there's current welfare concerns, we don't intervene on that because the individual is, oftentimes maybe they have family that they're helping them out. Just because they're getting evicted doesn't mean that the animal's in distress and we have to intervene and do something. That's right, I agree. There's some other types of calls that we get, and it's, with panhandling on the streets and, people have dogs with them or cats, whatever. There's an assumption by the public that a panhandler is homeless. That's not always the truth. They could have a home. But in some instances, we will respond. We'll take that opportunity maybe just to go talk to the person, say, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Is there anything that we can help you with? If there's a safety issue for the animal, if it's really, really cold, or if it's, they're weaving in between traffic, we'll ask them to do it in a more safe manner. Maybe they don't need their animal there with them today, or they could leave them home or leave them with a friend. Again, that's not, the issue of panhandling with an animal is not necessarily an offense, it's just the safety issue. But it gives us the opportunity to have a chat with that person. Hey, do you need some food? Can we give you, we've given out dog jackets or, booties or something like that, dog beds. But it's an opportunity for us to make contact with that person and just see how they're doing, and if there's anything that we can do to help. We don't receive a lot of calls about pets that are living unhoused with their owner and are in need of medical care. In many cases, the animals are quite healthy and happy. There's a large stigma associated with individuals who are unhoused and have pets. We hear many accusations that pets are suffering and must be removed from that person. We find that unfair and unreasonable. We get a lot of pressure from the community to do something. As well as our obligation, we have an obligation to respect people's rights in the community. Just because a person and their pet may be without housing, it doesn't mean that that pet is suffering and in distress. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that a number of pets looking for new homes was down. Many of our shelters, they were empty, and we had very few adoptable animals. It appeared that with the lockdowns and individuals working from home, everyone kind of went out and got a pet, and that's great. That's wonderful. Now, 3 years later, our shelters are overrun, and we're wanting to surrender back to our shelters, and that's really sad to see. This could be for various reasons, but one of those reasons is unaffordable housing and housing that will not accept pets. So now people are having to surrender them back to shelters, and we're seeing an uptick in that, and it's very sad. The rent evictions that now, they don't allow pets, and all of a sudden you're just living with one cat, and you get a notice saying move out, or the cat it's either you or the cat. Now, what kind of a dilemma does that put you in? So this is a very common reason that pets will leave their pets behind. So if they move out and they have nowhere to take their pets, people are left, they do leave their pets behind. And we get a call about it, there's cats in an apartment. That's weekly, all across the province. We're not saying it's excusable or okay to leave your pet behind, because sometimes they don't get discovered for a very long time, and that's not okay either. But we're looking at desperate times, and we know people, sometimes their actions are desperate, and it's okay. It's okay. Oh, he has to go pee. Yeah. So when we're responding to these complaints and we come across individuals who are facing eviction, now for that reason for the eviction is it's beyond the SPCA to control or to assist with. Often one of the solutions we can offer is to surrender their pet. If the SPCA has room. When we begin this discussion, we can tell just how excruciatingly painful the mere conversation is with that person. Just the thought of having to, okay, I'm facing eviction, I'm having to move out of my house, I have to move, and now I'm going to have to give up my pet that I've had for the last 8 years. I can't imagine it. We know that there's a common question people ask, well, shouldn't people experiencing homelessness give up their pets? Wouldn't it be their life be easier if they didn't have a pet? Now, to me, the thought of giving up my dogs and, if I were facing that situation, that would be incomprehensible. I can't even fathom, having to go through that. I don't even want to think about it. We do know that pets can contribute to more responsibility and even some additional hardships, such as the people shelters, we'll call them people shelters and animal shelters, may not be accessible due to their pets. They don't accept pets. Some shelters just don't allow any. Accessing services, what do they do with their pet when they have to go to work or when they want to go to the library to use the internet? There's an added strain on resources, for example, food and veterinary care, just simple things like flea medication is really hard for everyone. Public and law enforcement criticism. We get so many complaints about homeless individuals and their pets, usually just because they're homeless and they own a pet. So it's not fair. What we don't see or hear about is the relationship between that person and their pet. The unconditional love that they give and how they support each other in some of the most vulnerable times. How many of us have a pet waiting at home? I know I do. We all just can't wait to go home at the end of the day to see our pets. Like, that's the one thing that you love, coming through that door, wherever you go to call home. If that pet is there, it's one of the most, the best things of my day. I know that. Sometimes, I have a little app on my phone with a camera. I'll just look at them and, just say, what are you doing? Talk to them. What are you doing now?
I know who you're talking to.
Yeah. What are you doing?
So my neighbors, they have that. They talk to their animals through the day. The treat thing.
Yeah, you can throw them a treat. Yeah. So, just imagine your world is crumbling and you get an eviction notice in the mail saying that renovations are happening in the building and you can no longer have that pet with you. You're facing moving out to a new place that doesn't allow that has to allow pets. Those are extremely difficult to find. It's hard to find a place just in general, let alone one that will accept a pet. So maybe you just have to get out by a certain date and you don't have any options. So you try every angle with the landlord and try to make amends, but their decision is final and they won't be changing that. So this is just really unbearable for many people, and I can't even imagine. I did speak, or I spoke to so many individuals over the years, and for the most part, pet owners would do almost anything for their pets. They tell you stories about how they saved their pets and how they've had them for such a long time, and they saved them and nursed them back to health, and they've never been separated. You can tell that they adore their pet and their pet adores them just by their interactions together. It's a very closeness. They tell you that their pets, or they tell us that their pets eat better than they do sometimes, and for the most part, I believe them. We saw Toots in here. Toots looked a little chunky. That's everybody. That's, we would do anything for our pets. We really would. Coats look good, ears are good, nails are good. We go in and they're doing everything they can for their pets. And as Liz said earlier too, often better than some people in, you know, those $500,000 homes. Because we see a lot of those people living in those situations that are not taking good care of their pets. Even sweaters, you know. I've gone to situations where there was an encampment and, you know, the pets were wearing the person's sweaters, you know, to keep them warm. It was, and they were just loving it. I've also had the opportunity to speak with many individuals over the years who were experiencing homelessness because of an addiction they had been battling. I remember one girl who told me that if it wasn't for her cat, she wouldn't get up in the morning. She knew that she had to feed her cat, and that cat just kept her going every day. She loved that cat. Oh my gosh, she loved that cat. So it's because of my interactions with people who are facing homelessness and the current and in the past, I believed them when they told me that their pets help keep them alive. There's been so many situations where they said, you don't understand, this pet got me through some of the worst situations in my life, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this dog. Please don't take my dog. I believe them. I really believe them.
The other part I would add is that when you're displaced, your animal's displaced as well. And I'm aware that the SPCA also supports debt subsidies to your sponsors because I've been through that. And you can't explain it. You might be able to explain to your toddlers what's going on in your life, what's going on. You can't explain to the family pet why they don't have their familiar housing and securities. And they get sick sometimes because of the stress.
Sure they do.
And I did run into that situation, and I was able to get some help for my dog because he was vomiting and diarrhea from all the stress on the medication.
That is so true. The amount of stress that a dog will see when they move from situation to situation, different place. It's true, the amount of stress that they undergo as well. So it's very stressful for everyone.
And I had housing workers say, if you would just let it go, get rid of him, how old is he, when is he going to die? Because you could probably get your housing this year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And
That's-
he was a working animal. I worked with high-risk teens and adults in the GTA for over 20 years. And he's 9. Most of his life, he was an emotional support dog. And in Ontario, in the GTA, he was allowed in the hospital to go after school. Here, he's not.
Yeah, that's
And he has
unfortunate.
work papers, yes.
Yeah, no, I'm
But
sorry.
because of his former physical past, it doesn't count here.
Yeah, no, that's something that we need to have changed.
And
Yeah.
in his retirement, I can't do that.
So I do believe people when they tell me that that pet saved their life. I really do. You know, we as officers, we still have a duty to educate people and ourselves. We have a duty to educate ourselves as well to what the people's situations are in times of crisis. We have an obligation to be open and unbiased, to listen and to understand what people are telling us, to be compassionate and to be sensitive to people's situations everywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't take action, because there are sometimes we have to. But first, we have to listen. We have to help when we can, and we'll do that. We need to, you know, it's the respect. We need to give people respect. And hear them out and see if there is something that we can do to help. It's really amazing how a situation can turn out, because I know when we show up at the door, sometimes it's like, it could be a person's, you know, biggest fear. I've got SPCA officers standing at my door in uniform and a badge, and they're going to take my dog. I know they're going to take my dog. And the fear, and so they become very defensive. And, you know, get out, I don't want you here, and they, you know, tell us all kinds of stories. But all we want to do is we want to talk to you. We want to see what's going on, see what we can do to help. Taking somebody's dog is the or cat, or rabbit, snake, whatever it is. It's the absolute last thing we want to do. Our shelters are full. we have no room, you know, we don't have the room. It's about keeping families together, keeping pets and families together in a safe, a healthy environment is our goal, and that's what we're trying to do. So it's about building that trust with people so that we can work with you. Maybe we can educate you. Maybe we can give you some guidance or assistance. Maybe there's somebody that can help you. If the animal is really, really sick, you know, Heather's going to talk about, you know, some of the programs and services that the SPCA has and how we can help you. You know, it's about, you know, doing our job respectfully and responsibly, and we owe that to the people. It's about earning that trust. And, you know, for me, safe and healthy communities begin with healthy and safe homes that include pets. I believe that. So, and I think probably everybody here believes that too. So, yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Joanne. And I'm now pleased to hand it over, as she mentioned. So Heather Wooden is our Director of Admin and Programs at the SPCA. Would you like to do, you're going to come up? All right. I know you're thrilled about that.
Hi. I have some information in terms of like what our shelters are experiencing, sort of how everything that's been discussed is affecting us as well at the SPCA, what that's creating for us. And then I can talk a little bit about some of the programs that we've invested in to try and keep pets and families together, which really has been the shift in our focus over the past few years. So I started with the SPCA about 12 years ago, working in the shelter. I was the one taking the phone calls for everyone's requests for what sort of service and needs they had from the SPCA. So I have seen sort of how that has evolved over time. The shelters, you know, the programs we initially started with were addressing you know, getting pets spayed or neutered, reducing the pet population, trap, neuter, return to reduce the number of feral cats that were, you know, having kittens outside. Those were our initial focuses, and those were a little sort of self-serving because we wanted to reduce the population of animals coming into our care so that we could say yes to more owners and their situations. And we saw an immediate impact of the programs that we implemented starting back in 2013 when we started our first spay-neuter clinic. Immediately after that, we started to notice a decline in the requests for help, which was fantastic news. I would say we are in the business to try and put ourselves out of business, you know, but there will always be a need for the SPCA. But we definitely want to keep pets out of our care and keep them in their homes. It's better for us, it's better for the person, it's better for the pet. This year, COVID did some very strange things, so those aren't great comparative years. You know, we saw an immediate decline in the animals coming in. You know, the number of requests for help were drastically lower. People were not moving out of province, they were not moving at all. Evictions were restricted, so the amount of animals coming in was so much less, and there was a huge demand for adopting pets. But if you try to adopt a pet during COVID, you would find it was very hard because there weren't a lot of pets available to you. Now we have seen a spike again in the animals needing our care and rehoming, and we are on track to almost surpass 2019. So all those gains we made and those declines in the need for our rehoming services, we're starting to see the spike go back up, which is the reverse trend that we want to see, of course. Specifically, we look at the amount of dogs, cats, and then pocket pets or critters, we call them, which is sort of lumped together. Your bunnies and your rats and your you know, birds and all that sort of, you know, companion animals in that other realm. You know, even the increase in pocket pets has been quite drastic. And there's a couple of reasons sort of coupled together that we're seeing affecting us all at the same time. It is very expensive for us to care for the pets that come into us. The cost of veterinary care, as I'm sure everyone knows, has risen drastically in the past few years, as has most things. And that includes the veterinary care we have to provide to our animals. So we're seeing an increased expense. So much so that we have expanded our own veterinary services as well. So we provide our own veterinary services to our animals, and we've expanded providing public veterinary services as well. In our shelters, though, we are finding a note about the age of animals coming into our care. The older the animal, typically the longer it takes them to adjust to a huge change in their life circumstances. That 8-week-old kitten doesn't really show a lot of signs of stress going from one home to a new home. But your 10-year-old dog shows an extreme amount of stress when there's a change in their life from something that they have known for a very long time. That results in them having a harder time adjusting, a longer length of stay. Their increased stress actually reduces their immune system and will make them more susceptible to illness, which causes us more expense on medical care, delays the time they can get ready for adoption. So they're with us a lot longer when they're an older pet. So it costs us more in medical care, and then their adoption fees are reduced. So they're an increased expense to us. Overall, our goal is to help those animals stay in the homes where they are loved and cared for and wanted, and not have them come into our shelter, because we see how difficult it is for an older pet coming into our care. And how it has created such a financial expense on the SPCA. And it is important to note that we do not receive government funding for the animal care services, veterinary costs, and those programs that we provide. Those are not government funded. Those are funded by fees, which are not proportional to what we put in, and by donations and grants and all sorts of things that we apply for. So we are seeing sort of a financial burden at the same time about continuing to provide the same level of services we always have. The older animals, the longer adjustment period. We have seen very difficult decisions that owners have had to make in bringing their pets into our care. We try to reserve judgment, and be a welcoming environment. We're trying to make that connection so that it is okay for you to reach out to us and ask us for help for what you need, whether it is rehoming or if it is other support services, which we have tried to implement some here as well. This issue of housing is affecting everyone. Even our own employees have experienced this, where they are looking at how they can keep their own pet. And these are responsible medical professionals who are providing, an excellent standard of care. So we know that it affects other owners who are also providing a great standard of care. Surrendered pets really do grieve the loss of their owners. We do see their depression in their behavior, not wanting to get out of their kennels so much, some behavioral issues as well, and the added expense. Dogs especially sort of has been a focus in terms of housing. The demand for intake in amount of dogs has sort of increased more so than the cat side. A lot of our progressive programs were very cat focused in reducing that population. But dogs and sort of their behavior needs take a lot of our resources at the SPCA. It is more time and effort and expense for us to care for a dog than it is for a cat equally. And the amount of cats we have available is not as proportionate, of course, to the amount of dogs. The critters we have seen, specifically rabbits, as Kathleen mentioned, in terms of expenses, they are a very expensive pet. We have learned they are an exotic medicine, which is a specialty of veterinary medicine, which means the cost for even an exam, let alone any of the treatments, is very limited. And with a lot happening in our veterinary industry, there's fewer and fewer veterinarians who have that expertise or even have that capacity to see these animals. So bunnies have been a special challenge. The time bunnies are with us is exponentially longer than any other pet. We have seen an increase because of the age of the animals, their adjustment periods, in the amount of time they're with us in a shelter. And that's not great. We want them to be with us as little as possible. We want them, if they have to come into us, to go to a new home as quickly as we can get them to the new home. We only want to really be a temporary stay on their journey to a new home. Some of the programs we're doing to try and combat the situation, Pet Pantry is something we sort of did without saying it for quite a number of years, but it is something we push and promote now, that we will provide pet food to someone who is struggling so that they can focus on buying themselves food. But pet food, pet cat litter, we always have lots of supplies in terms of the coats and dishes and everything that you may need. Crates, if you're experiencing a behavioral problem, we will give you a crate. We're fortunate to be the recipient of a lot of donations of items, especially when people lose their pets. They want to do something good with that, and they donate the items to the SPCA, and we use those items to help support pet owners who may have a need for those. So sometimes that's a solution we can do to help keep a pet in their home. Their dog is destructive when they go to work. Have you thought about crate training? I can give you that crate so it is not a financial barrier for you. So Pet Pantry's expanded to a lot of things that we can provide. Pause and support is one people talk about a lot. It's something we started in 2019. We had funding from PetSmart Charities. It is no longer funded. PetSmart Charities is focused into veterinary care funding. So pause and support, initially we had put in there domestic violence, hospital stays, and housing. We quickly learned the demand. The demand for temporary boarding for housing was more than our resources could support, and the duration was more than our foster homes could accommodate. So we had to restrict significantly the amount of support we did for housing. What is he? He wants something from you. Oh, you have the treats? She knows.
I meant to
Yeah.
leave them for my dog.
Yeah.
When I was leaving.
She
and
knows.
I accidentally brought them.
Her nose knows.
But
Yeah.
now he knows.
Her nose knows. Yeah. Yeah. Very persistent. So.
What made him poopy in the first place?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah. Now that's part of the Pet Pantry too, because we get all these donations of dogs in our care, but we have to feed them a consistent diet, or we have diarrhea we have to deal with, and then we have to go to a vet, and then that takes long. So yes, the donations are greatly appreciated, but we're going to pass them along instead of using them for animals in our care, because diarrhea is a huge issue for animals. The amount of treats people want to give the cats because they're in kennels, and then the diarrhea that they get from that. So well-intentioned, not great result. Don't give all the cats treats. Diarrhea, yeah. It is a problem. It is a delay. The stress, the adjustment to food, it is a delay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, getting a little chunky and all that sort of stuff. So pause and support, our delve into try to keeping pets and families together. The Pause and Support program provides temporary boarding in our shelters, because initially we had the ability to do that. We were starting to see that decline in requests for help, right? But now that we're seeing an increase in requests for help, our shelters are more full and we have less capacity to help people with temporary boarding. So the demand for surrendering has really impacted the ability for us to offer this program. The duration that people need in this program is quite long. Our goal is to not have animals in our care for very long, and pause and support in some situations have been 6 months of time. And our foster network is still limited. We need foster homes for cats that have been surrendered, dogs that have been surrendered and need some medical care. There is a finite limit to that, as well as a limit to the financial costs that this program takes. As well, funding has limits, and this is one program that we are trying to operate in a more sustainable way, because of the costs that it is affecting the SPCA. So domestic violence is still very much a focus. We will provide pause and support boarding for domestic violence, those fleeing situations. So that's available, immediately. We've had a lot of cats staying in our offices. We've had to pay for animals to go to a boarding facility because we didn't have space. And we've had to really look at how we can support this program going forward. And that does involve limiting the boarding we provide for people experiencing housing situations. So that leaves them with even more limited options and makes surrender a more viable option for them. But in that situation, the pet will be going home, preferably in 2 to 3 weeks. It's sort of our average instead of those 6 months. So it's been a difficult change for us to adjust to, but it's our resources just don't allow us to continue the way we have been. During the emergency situations, we did have over 200 animals come into our boarding program temporarily. It was a very interesting situation because we got to see a lot. The critter was an axolotl that was in the pot. They're like the fish with legs. Yes. This lovely home. They were very worried, hadn't been fed. It's been a few days. You have to feed them twice a week or something. And they said, just break the window and go on in and go get a pot from the kitchen and put water in the pot. So we had returned it to them with a pot. Axolotl bottle in a pot. Yes. So we brought it out, a cooking pot. And
she came to opened the car door and sitting there and she's like, brings a pot. And I'm like, are we making lunch?
Do not cook that, no. But the owner's son was very worried about his pet. And they are going through a lot of stress with their, going to their home, and this is just one comfort we can say that your pet is okay. So that was a really good story. I learned how much, and this was information for me, I learned how much people love their chickens. That was very shocking for me. The amount of people who have chickens, I did not know this was a thing, and how much they cared for their chickens. Was very educational to us. So we fed a lot of chickens during the wildfire. So that was that was a fun experience as well in terms of being able to provide that positive outcome to those chickens that were okay. So lots of chickens. But for the boarding, we had over 200 animals in our care. Going through foster situations, our shelters were, full to the brim. We transported animals, because the regions affected were really HRM and Yarmouth. We had to transport animals to Truro, to Pictou, to the Valley to support them. So even, if your animal came in the Valley into Yarmouth, it could have been boarded in Truro. So we really had to use every available space to us to be able to provide this service. And it took some time for people to come get their animals. A lot of them, if they were fortunate enough to still have a home and were able to return home, they were able to return home as soon as the evacuation was lifted. But there were some people who lost their home where their animals were with us for several months before they were able to find alternate housing. So a big focus of ours now has been in the veterinary care side of things. One situation comes to mind that kind of wraps into a lot of that is we had a person come in who was in a difficult housing situation, difficult financial situation, who was on the road to recovery from an addiction issue, and his dog had pyometra, which is an infection of the uterus, which is an immediate life-threatening condition and requires an immediate surgery. It can be prevented by spaying your pet, but spaying is expensive, especially on a dog. And when they get this infection, this spay surgery is even that much more expensive. So our veterinary services, while we do have a funding is again limited, and the demand far outweighs the availability of funds. But we've had to get creative in the solutions that we have. We practice something called access to care in the veterinary industry. It's sort of a different method in terms of, you may have heard of the gold standard of care, which is you could do this test and this diagnostic, and you could do this specialty referral, and you can go to PEI ABC and do, but a lot of those things are beyond means. Access to care means trying to work with the person to figure out, walks like a duck. If it looks like a UTI, maybe it is a UTI. We can try some medications first, try to skip that diagnostic. It's taking a bit of a risk and a leap. That you may be wrong and it may not be that, and you may have to go back to the diagnostic, but it's trying to provide the path that the person can afford and the person can achieve, which may not include all the diagnostics we would like to see, and not having 100% answers to what is medically going on, but trying to address the issue and keep the animal comfortable. With the pyrometer, we were able to offer payment plan arrangements, which is a risk we are taking. And it's sort of a leap we took opening the veterinary care, that we were going to offer payment plans that do not require any sort of credit evaluation. We were just going to take people's word, what they were able to afford to pay back. And we were very surprised and happy to see that the repayment rate on payment plans was over 80%. We were kind of going in and saying, okay, I think we're going to get like half, 50% back. So we kept our expectations low, but the pet owners who want to pay back, they want to pay for the services. It's just that all of a sudden, $1,000 bill that is just out of their reach. But when we give them options, they do follow up and they pay us every month what they can afford. And if there's a month they can't, we can be flexible with that. So it's no interest, flexible payment arrangements. And it has really pleasantly surprised us with the amount of people who continue that commitment, whenever they are able to do so. So that's something we are continuing, and I think that's why we see a lot of people coming to our veterinary services when they haven't been able to access the care they need, is because we can sort of be flexible with those payment arrangements. Our fees, we try to make them as accessible to people, but any veterinary fee sometimes is beyond people's means, especially when you get into the illness care and the diagnostics and the treatments and the follow-ups, so it's not the perfect solution. It's not the only solution that we need. These are the things we can do to try and help, but the cost, if it was just about get more funding, it would be billions of dollars to solve Canada's issue with getting all pets the minimum amount of care we would want. So funding alone can't solve this. We have to find other creative solutions for that. So Pyometra, the pity. So the pity with the Pyometra did very well. We did have some challenges with follow-up care, being able to contact the individual in terms of, not having access to a cell phone, not being reachable. So there were some challenges in terms of not just providing the medical care, but the hospital standard in terms of rechecks, accessing our hospital, physically getting there was also a challenge. Contacting the individual to confirm the appointment time to check on the animal, that was a challenge. We had to make sure we answered our phone when this person called and not let it go to voicemail because he was calling from a borrowed phone or from somewhere where he could access. So it was sort of one of our first experiences in trying to reduce the other barriers that we don't always think of when it comes to access to veterinary care. So Paws and Port Pet Pantry Vet Care, am I forgetting anything? So that is a lot of the shift we have started to go towards keeping pets and families together. Even with our Paws and Support program, it does separate the families, unfortunately, while they are accessing care through one of the other human support programs. It would be always ideal if pets were allowed more into those type of programs as well, and I'm sure that comes with a whole host of other challenges in terms of support. But we do still have challenges specifically with persons experiencing intimate partner violence. We find the pets are also affected. So these are not pets that, would really thrive in a new home. They're understood and loved in their current home, but we do also see a lot of these animals have effects, and have experienced trauma and are showing behavioral challenges due to sort of the violence they have experienced in the home as well. So we definitely want to keep those pets together because that is the best positive outcome for them. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I know there was a lot of information. I hope that you all found it really helpful. We do have some time for Q&A if anyone has any questions. Okay, and we have microphones, sorry.
I'm trying to talk from here. If
Oh,
everyone
okay,
can hear me.
sure, yeah.
But, anyway, my name's Jordan Carr. I'm actually a chicken person.
Great.
So my kids have been advocating quite strongly for a dog, so we'll see where that ends up going. But anyway, so I'm a manager with Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Agency, and we manage 11,200 rent-geared to income housing units for low-income Nova Scotians. And we've been talking a lot about the benefits of pet ownership, especially where 16% of our tenants are seniors and could benefit from that companionship. On the flip side is when I talk to tenants, pets are actually one of the most divisive issues we deal with. Right down the middle, half of them, yay, pro pets. The other half, I don't want a pet anywhere near my building. Yeah, it's weird, it's strange. But
Interesting.
anyway.
Okay.
And also, though, we want to be able for our tenants to have successful pet ownership, and so there's concerns about ability to be able to care for the pet, or what happens where they end up in the hospital or somewhere they're in a position where they're not able to care for their pet. So my question is what are your thoughts in being able to balance different needs as from the landlord perspective, different needs of different tenants in terms of bringing pets into a community, and also what the potential opportunities are for a landlord in being able to support successful pet ownership of their tenants?
So that's a great question. Does anyone feel, I have two things I just want to mention. I don't know if you visited our booth downstairs, but we have a couple of sample documents. One is a landlord building owner package that includes from the BC SPCA that includes an agreement and what we call a pet resume that you could provide to tenants that they could fill out if they're moving in. And it also has some sample policies and ways that you can manage sort of expectations. But I don't know if there is a microphone there. I don't know if any of you want to answer or does anyone feel like they want to? Sure. Toots definitely wants to get in on this. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry.
Like a little bit of experience with that kind of dynamic. That I'm in Vita Housing, and so Vita is a very animal friendly, and they have over 4,800 rental units across the Maritimes. And so I actually ended up coordinating the community gardens for where I am at, but because we're pet friendly, I created a community chat as well. And that community chat, because Vita has so many pet owners, it didn't just turn out to be coordinating the gardens. We're now coordinating, looking out for each other and discussing things. And we had an animal Halloween, or most of this week, this was the only day I didn't have care from my neighbors, so I could attend this conference for my dog. But and we just look out for each other. So that idea of coordinating the community chat, and then having some ground rules for what that is and interactions should be, like the idea that you have to be positive and supportive, right? But that has worked out very well, and actually my superintendent has told others how well it worked, because they actually had skepticism about the idea of using a chat for our community, and it's been over a year now. It's been very positive.
Yeah, I think that's, is this on?
Yep.
I have to go really close. I think that's, great information, and I appreciate your question from that perspective as well, because we do run into a lot of conflict in situations with landlords and tenants, and people not appreciating that they have to walk out a door and there's a big dog kind of barking at them, or the dog that's left barking all day and they can hear it below. I think that it's relevant, and I think that we need to take those things into consideration for the solitude of the people living below or next door or whatever. I think it's about responsibility, pet ownership responsibility. So, you know, maybe there is a resume that you have to kind of fill out. You know, maybe there are some stipulations that have to be in place for that to happen. But I think to be just not inclusive of pets can be very, very damaging, or you know, people that are already living in buildings and then all of a sudden they have to move out because of their pet, or their pet has to leave, and I think those implications can be very detrimental on people. So I think it's important that there is some basis if we're going to allow pets in our building. Okay, well then there's going to be some guidelines for it, and if the guidelines are, you know, enforced and followed, hopefully there can be some you know, cohabitation and responsible pet owners. They need to take responsibility for their own pets for sure, to keep that cohesiveness within the building, and hopefully we can see that happening.
The other piece I would say is we build community around it. So not everybody is a pet owner or a pet lover in our community, but because we have that group forum to chat, when we can hear somebody's dog is barking excessively or somebody's bird is squawking, the other people in the community of pet loving actually look out for each other. Hey, do you want me to go check in on your bird or your dog, and maybe set them out for a walk? So then we have that sense of community. So yes, responsibility, accountability, and parameters, but also to cultivate that you have people that have that care and compassion to build on that sense of community.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just note two resources that I've referenced. I'll put them up here, and we certainly can share them with you if you want to give me your card later. There's the Mickelson Found Animals. They have a pet inclusive housing initiative, and there's a massive report that they've provided that also include information on how to integrate pets into housing. One of the things that they talk about is social cohesion within buildings. People who are in facilities where pets are existing, while some may not want them living in their space, people have a better sense of knowing their neighbors and being more, as you were pointing out, having a better sense of community. The other is BC SPCA has been kind of leading in the country on this initiative. They have pet-friendly housing information, so that's on their website as well. And at the bottom, if you just look down here, taking action, there's resolutions that they have, a pledge, and then there's a renter's guide, a sample rental agreement, and a strata council guide as well. And I'd be happy to connect any of you with their team who've been working on this quite a bit. The Mickelson report did find, while there may have been initially some concerns about damages, the majority of animals don't cause damage to the buildings, and most owners take good care of them. Any damage deposits that were paid, the damage that was caused by a pet was exponentially, like a fraction of, so the average was about $200 or something like that across, North America, with some places as high as $800. Pet damage was somewhere in the realm of like $100 after some people living there for 5 to 10 years. Yes? For a damage fee?
Yeah, for my dog. So that got expensive. But I was wondering, are there any animal-friendly human shelters across Canada?
You mean for like housing, like if you're unhoused?
Yeah, like say you become homeless and you have a dog. Are you allowed to take your dog?
I mean, I would defer to the people in the room, but yeah.
Yeah, that's where you are.
Yeah, it depends where you are. We don't have,
Alberta?
Dufferin, oh yeah, we're from Dufferin County, Ontario, and in our women's shelter.
Okay.
Women and
Yeah,
families.
it's just because like Calgary's so exclusive to like where you get. Like,
Just that way other people can hear what you're saying.
yeah, like Calgary just seems to be really exclusive to like where you can have an animal. Like there's no housing rights really, and yeah, I don't know. It's just made it hard. Like I'm gonna have to move in January, I think, and I'm gonna struggle to find a place because I have a dog and a cat, and 2 kids and
Of course.
a partner.
And that was a shock coming from Ontario to Nova Scotia for myself, to find affordable housing that was pet-friendly.
I don't want to.
And
Yeah.
Ontario, that wasn't as big an issue.
Yeah.
because,
We have, as you all know, we're in a federated model here where every province is completely different, and the regulations around housing, healthcare, and other issues, employment, are all different from province to province. So I think there warrants some advocacy at a federal level. But do you want
And just in terms of when the wildfires happened, we did call all of the shelters that were opening and asked if they were all pet friendly. And we had 2 answers of yes, one in HRM, one not in HRM, that they would allow pets. So it was extremely limited, which is why we ended up having to take 200 plus animals, because they didn't have that alternative. So even in the crisis situations,
Yeah.
we did found that keeping the pets and families together just wasn't offered in those emergency sheltering situations.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the innovations that are happening that you mentioned, as specifically in Nova Scotia, what legislation or changes on a broad scale would help with that issue?
That's a great question. At our booth, we have the Nova Scotia NDP have tabled a motion to ban pet evictions as an amendment to the housing legislation here. I'm not sure if we know on any other provincial levels. I
In
don't.
Ontario, I was a landlord for years, and in Ontario, you cannot have prejudice.
Okay,
for-
so Ontario already has that legislation. Okay. Sorry. Do you want?
That's the Nova Scotia legislation.
Okay. All right. That.
My mom was blind and like she had prejudice against her seeing eye dog.
Yeah. So this is something that needs to become more regulated. Unfortunately, much like all things, leaving it to just, I think, everybody having a choice about how it gets managed is a problem. But we do have samples of that legislation down on our table if anyone would like a copy, or the amendment. Yeah. Yep.
Just to address your question from earlier there, a gentleman with the orange hat. So the province did open, or it will be opening a winter overnight shelter at a local church called St. Paul's Church. It'll house about 100 people.
In Alberta?
Oh no, sorry, I thought you were
Yeah.
asking about like what we're doing.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, sorry. I don't know if I stated that, but yeah.
Yeah.
In Alberta, but yeah, that's good, man. Like just where I'm from, it's very, very hard. Like there's a housing crisis, plus they don't give 2 hoops about animals.
Yeah, this
I-
one
yeah.
looks at pets and people of just about any age and any gender, and I do hope that there's more of that.
Yeah.
If you have contact information, I could connect you with the team in Alberta. The SPCA is there, and they may have information.
I'd like to look on something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I just have a quick question about the pit bull with the uterus issue. So when you were providing care to that person and their pet, with them being in a precarious situation, homeless, how quickly were you able to get care for that animal? Because you said it was like an emergency, had to be done pretty quickly. So I'm wondering, is your, admin time quicker than some other veterinarians? Because it takes more time to get in.
Yeah, and we were referred that particular case from an emergency hospital where they did not have the flexibility in terms of payment plans. So we were referred that individual. It did create some challenges because, the person did not necessarily come in for the appointment time when it was scheduled because it was within the range. So we had to learn how to be flexible with that, but still, we have to be sustainable in our hospital, and we can't have a lot of missed appointment times, and because that's somebody else's opportunity missed. So we were able to get the surgery in rather quickly. It's not the surgical time. We have done spay-neuter high volume since 2013. The SPCA really is sort of the spay-neuter experts versus private hospitals where they don't do as much spay-neuter as we do. So we do have quite a surgical expertise and a focus. Getting in for an appointment was very challenging to get the diagnostic, but in this case it was just a surgical referral. So we were able to make that capacity rather quickly. Sometimes it involves the team staying a little bit late, which we don't like to do that a lot to folks, because they do need their own work-life balance. But the surgical time is something that we sort of have that flexibility with. We have also SPCA animals, and they can wait another day, where this couldn't wait another day. So we have our own scheduling sort of flexibility where timing really wasn't one of our challenges. Yeah.
So if somebody unhoused was having an emergency issue with their pet, would it be best way to go to like an emergency hospital first, and then if they can't afford the bill, they would connect you guys with the emergency hospital?
Yeah.
Or right to you?
Our hospitals do not provide 24/7 care, so we would have to be open that day for them to access. So their emergency has to happen during the day as well. So otherwise, their only option is going to an emergency hospital and speaking to that hospital. It depends on what's happening, because sometimes the best solution is to say goodbye because the treatment isn't there. So it sort of depends what it is. And working with that, private hospital, I can speak on behalf of the emergency clinic and what their processes are. But they do call us in the morning and say, hey, I had this overnight. They can't afford the recommended treatment, but we house them for the night. Can I bring them over to you? And especially when it is a surgical fix, those are things we can accommodate easier than sort of a chronic care where it's going to require monthly treatments and blood work and medications. Those are much harder to solve than the quick fixes of the dog was spayed and it's fine and you're done, so one and done sort of situations.
But it was immediate.
It's immediate, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we've got 2 more minutes left, so just gentleman over here, and then that's going to be our last question for today, but you're welcome to come visit us at the booth downstairs, yeah.
No pressure then. So we're looking to explore pet-friendly shelters in my municipality in Ontario.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if anybody has any recommendations or how people have addressed or overcome concerns of animals biting people, or because I feel like that's one of the main obstacles for us. There have been stories of other service managers who have had that. They've had pet-friendly shelters, a biting incident happened, and then they had to remove the policy completely.
I don't know, does Joanne or Heather? Do you have?
I don't have any experience with like human shelters that
Okay.
are able to provide,
But I saw someone's hand go up, maybe, yeah?
I don't know if I have an answer for that, except to say that when you put animals outside in encampments, they're much less friendly. So we've had a recent incident of someone being attacked in an encampment. So, I wanted to share that.
I mean, it's possible, I don't know, but we could connect you with some of the team in Ontario that may have some advice, the Ontario Humane Society, and muzzles, well, if they're practiced properly, would they be something within? Yeah. Phoenix Youth Shelter? Oh, okay, okay.
May I plug a resource?
Yes, absolutely. Any resources are welcome, yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Claire. I'm from the ACT project with Humane Canada.
Oh, hey, Claire.
Hi.
Yeah, you're here.
Yes, it's
Okay.
nice to see you.
Hi.
We are working to provide supports for reducing barriers for women with animals experiencing gender-based violence, and we have an online learning center with all kinds of modules on how you can incorporate animals into your sheltering. So I would definitely check that out. And there's all kinds of like resource tools and templates for intake forms and all that kind of stuff.
What's the title of it again?
It is, so if you go ACT Project.
Okay.
Yeah.
This
And
one here?
Yes.
Okay, so Humane Canada is our national organization that does advocacy and training.
That's right.
Claire is here, but this is another really great tool. We've got some, I think, some pamphlets and stuff downstairs as well on the table, so.
And I think even like in the hotels where they allow pets, they have a specific floor or wing. That's a pet-friendly area, and then also then that reduces issues of allergies and so on, exposure as well. So you may, if you prefer to do that in a shelter, created a wing or floor on that shelter that is animal friendly.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Okay, all right, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the session. I do want to say really quickly, well, they've been very modest about it. Joanne and Heather spent the better part of, I don't know how many weeks and hours outside during the wildfires here in Nova Scotia, rescuing more than 200 animals. And while our first responders have all been thanked, it's not very often we get a chance to publicly acknowledge the work that they've done as well. So thank you. Okay. Well, Alan, have a great day.